sindio? Yeah. Please introduce yourself holistically. Sasa. No, that was just a recap. Thank you. It's working, eh?
It's working. Oh, so good morning. God is good. And all the time. My name is Lydia Njoki Mushemi. I work in the Ministry of Education. I am a Deputy Director in charge of Quality Assurance and Standards. My work involves ensuring that government policies in schools are not only followed and implemented, but also enforced. I am very glad to be part of this team. I work a lot with the WASH department, the WASH section in the Ministry of Education, though I'm not the program officer. I also have had a chance of working with WASH section with UNICEF and other actors. So I'm passionate about WASH, and in particular menstrual health. We all know why. We must be very passionate about menstrual health because it has a direct link to learning and progress for the girl child. That does not mean I don't have the WASH implementation stake for the boys. I do. Because where I stand in for the boys and the girls in the school. So I am here to learn. I'm here to hear everything about this meeting. And thank you. And I'm looking forward for some very fruitful engagement. Asante sana.
Karibu sana, and thank you so much. I think we can do better than that, eh? Thank you. I'm not done with you yet. You've starved us of some information. Which state department?
Ministry of Education, State Department of Basic Education. So that is where I am, Directorate of Quality Assurance and Standards. I'm also a HOD in charge of research and development. Thank you.
I love that. Thank you so much. Next, Judy.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Judy Ndungu, as he has said. Actually, I can borrow her name because we share. The middle one is Njoki. So you feel free to call me Njoki or Judy, whichever suits you. I work for the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection in the Directorate of Children Services. So the State Department is Social Protection, over 30 years. And so let me take this opportunity to thank the organizers of this because children are usually left out. And I want to believe that this is the beginning of child participation in this sector. As we continue discussing, you'll realize that we are talking about the biggest population group, which is children, and they have a right to be able to participate. And so when we think of services, we're also serving them. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm also a mother, and I have passion for child protection. We are going to hear more about what child protection entails, and you'll be surprised that all our children require protection. And I also have a lot of interest in health. Actually, I did my master's in sociology, the health side of it. So it's important for us to have a healthy population, and sanitation is crucial. Currently, I am charged with the responsibility of heading a department in the directorate, and that is the Department of Institutions. As a directorate, if I'm not coming out very clearly, I even had my colleague talking about the department, directorate. but you get used to it. One, the department was just a department until recently. We became a directorate recently. So that's why sometimes we may feel that I'm not flowing with the directorate part. When you become a directorate, it means that you have many departments under you. And so about a year ago, I was assigned the department for institutions. These institutions are that are run by the directorate include children remand homes. We also have rehabilitation schools. We also have what we call rescue centers. And that's basically it. But also we have an overall responsibility in as far as some private organizations are concerned. And these are the organizations that are known as charitable children institutions. The Secretary for Children Services has the responsibility to inspect and forward reports to the registering authority for those organizations, that is the National Council for Children's Services. So we do have a role there. Charitable children institutions are also known as orphanages to some of you perhaps. So that's an area that is a department you're interested in. So for me, it's learning. There's a lot of takeaways I would like to, from this engagement, because like you've heard, we run institutions as a department, and some of the, maybe I think I heard our moderator talk about some innovations would be of great interest to us because we have those institutions in various parts of the country. Those of you who are yesterday, perhaps when the person from prisons talked about some of the challenges we also faced with them, and would like to be able to find out some of the solution that you have. We also now would like to discuss the issues of child protection around things to do with sanitation, because they do exist, and I'm sure we'll be able to engage during the discussion. So thank you for having me. Let me take this very early opportunity once again to thank the organizers for this thought, because going forward, I want to see child participation, want to see the input of children in all these matters, because if you don't carry the children along, they have a voice, and they'll be able to point out where we can do things even better. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I want us to be gender sensitive, so let's also take care of that.
Thank you. In the panel, I'm Donald Mann, yeah? Okay. I'm called Leonard Dafula. I work with National Council for Persons with Disability as Chief Disability Services Officer. I'm also happy and privileged to be here, to be part of this discussion. We'll share more. As a council, our interest is to mainstream disability in all that we provide to Kenyans. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sylvia Nyaga. I'm a water and environmental engineer by training and profession from Egerton. I heard you say you lecture at Egerton. Yeah, but we've never met. Yeah. And then I work for 2 social enterprises. So the first one is called Saina Consultancy, where I'm the founder and CEO. And what we do is we provide sanitation solutions specifically for persons with disabilities, and we focus on people with mobility challenges. And we do this primarily, so we have a portable toilet that we innovated that we provide to our users. And then for the second social enterprise, it's called Mama Toto, cloth diapers, where we provide cloth diapering and laundering services to promote environmental sustainability. And I'm excited to be here today.
Makofi kwake. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I think we'll be organized. We can start off from this end, or whichever, we can do it randomly. I want us to have a very lively engagement. And as you can see, I have my pambana with me. Yeah? I have my pambana with me. So I'll expect them to give us the marking scheme, right? I don't have answers to the questions that I have here. So you'll help us get the answers, But I also like one thing. We are not sole custodians of knowledge. So we'll have an input from the panelists, but feel free to add, okay? To add value to what has been presented here, and also to seek clarification. We are short of time, and we'll try as much as possible to manage our time. Declaration, I need to make a declaration here that the two seated are in the first cohort of the MSc Sanitation program that we are offering. So we have an attachment. So if you see me hovering around there, know that we have some attachment with two ladies who are what I call potential sanitation champions from the Equator. Without much ado, allow me to start off with Leonard from Disability Council, Chief Disability Services Officer. Now, my question is as follows. I'll start with a narrative, and then universal sanitation means that all people can access facilities comfortably and effectively. Many existing sanitation programs may not be inclusive because they do not capture the needs of alternatively enabled persons. Effectively, many people in communities are unserved or underserved by existing technologies and infrastructure, such as people living with disabilities. These are often overlooked during the design and implementation of sanitation programs. So when you're doing the design and implementation, we overlook this. No information, communication, and education material is prepared and provided for them. You see the problem that we are facing? Now, kindly, and forgive us, I wrote this, I may have used the wrong terminologies because that is not my area. I'm told that there are certain terms that nowadays we are not supposed to use, so feel free to correct us. So I would want you to kindly paint for us a picture of sanitation as a lived experience from the lessons of vulnerable members of our community. That is number one. And then number two, at the individual community and society level, how would an ideal sanitation technology look like through the lenses of vulnerable groups? I'll want you to respond to the two. And then there is your neighbor. She has quite some interesting work that she's doing. I'll want her to continue from there and respond to the following. What characterizes proper sanitation? We are talking about fecal waste management for people with disability. And then number two, what would it take to actualize the idea, albeit to reasonable standards, and why? So for now, I'll ask, hey, Da Wafula. From the community I come from, we say Wafula, but now he has added a DA. Probably, towards the end, you'll tell us what that means. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As a matter of introduction, I'll do some little correction. I saw we talk of persons with disability, not persons living with disability. They're supposed to be persons with disability. This is the situation. When it comes to persons with disability, what we are advocating is accessibility. And accessibility in 3 areas. Accessibility to physical environment, accessibility to ICT, which will involve technology, and accessibility to services that we are providing to all Kenyan, including persons with disability. When we talk of water and sanitation, let's look at water points. How accessible are our water points? Most of our water points are not accessible, which means that especially our person with the mobility, those with the physical mobility, may not be able to reach our water points. In terms of the distance, look at where we get this water. The distance may be a challenge for those with the physical mobility or physical disability. Some of the water points I know in terms of technology, they are steepy. And we know for those who have tried to improve in terms of putting some ramps, some of these ramps are not to that standard. Ramps are steepy and some of them are slippery. So when we have such situation, then it means that accessibility will be a big issue. Let's look at our sanitation facilities. We know we have various types of disability, and this one I'll be very specific on those with physical disability. This person who is on wheelchair. Most of the current situation, most of our sanitation facilities are not accessible in the manner that the spacing, accessing the sanitation facility is an issue. Then if you look at the public, especially public toilets, if you happen to visit any of our public washrooms, you realize that I know most of them, they don't have accessible that are set aside for persons with disability. We might only have the one that are used by everybody or able persons. So the current situation is that those that are available in terms of space, if I'm on wheelchair, look at the door, I might not be able to enter because of the door space. Once I'm inside there, the space also is so small for us to maneuver with my wheelchairs. Those spaces are very small in most of our facilities. Look at hand washing points. And most of hand washing points are too high for our brother and sister who are in wheelchair, also our brother and sister, those are persons of short stature. You'll get that those hand washing points are too high. Maybe I forgot to look at down the door. How are the doors? How do I push or pull? Most of the door, they are open from inside. And in this situation, we need the door that opens from outside. And the door knobs are supposed to be also of a certain height, so that if I'm a person of short stature, I can easily access. If I'm on a wheelchair, I can also access. Once I enter in a room, then of course some of this room maybe I may be needed to switch on the lights. What's the height of where the switches are? You will get that some of these switches are too high. For us, especially now for men with disability, look at the urinals. Some of those basins are too high. Imagine I'm on a wheelchair. For us men, you know how the urinals are, some of them are too high. How will I help myself if the urinals are too high? And in the, I don't know, for the ladies, then we have also issues of accessible washroom, which needs to have what you call handrails. And if you go to most of these, our washrooms, they don't have handrails. So like now, I'll have to use my own means to reach that particular basin. If there are no handrails, how do I access that particular basin? Then in terms of sanitation, you'll get that most of our washrooms are dirty. Now, if I have mobility challenges, then it means that I'll leave my wheelchair aside. How do I reach now that dirty toilets? Hygiene, it become a problem. So, most of our water and sanitation facilities are not accessible, are not inclusive for persons with disability. And what's the ideal situation? When you look in most of our public facilities, first, signages. You'll get that if we happen to have the toilet that are meant for persons with disability, even the writing, you'll get that it's written disabled, yeah? Disabled. So if you go to a facility that is already written disabled toilets, it means that that toilet cannot be used. It's a disabled. Yeah? So the right terminology is supposed to be accessible toilets or accessible washroom with the universal signage. Because it scares us when we go there and it's written disabled toilets. You get it? Then, an accessible toilet, when you get inside, it has to conform with standard for the built environment. National Council and Kenya Bureau for Standard, we came up with the standard for the built environment. It's ISO 21542 for 2011. It's the standard for the built environment, and it shows how an accessible washroom should look like. And we are saying that this accessible washroom is not only for persons with disability. It means that anybody that wants to have a decent place to relieve himself or herself can use it. That's why we are saying it is accessible. And accessible for everybody. It's universally accessible. Thank you.
I can do 5 actually, and give you 5. So the question was what characterizes proper sanitation for PWDs, and Fula has mostly explained like the features that make accessible bathrooms, accessible toilets, accessible water points. And I would say the value of this is, it means that a person with a disability is able to get privacy. Like all of us, when you go to the toilet, we want to close that door so that no one sees us. But then what happens if you can't use the toilet alone? It means you have to have help of someone. It means someone is seeing you. It means you have to improvise and maybe use something that's undignified. And when you think especially about slums, a lot of persons with disabilities, many of them don't have jobs. So you'll find a majority of them live in slums. And we all know the toilets in slums they're not the cleanest toilets. That's one. Already it's a shared toilet with like several households. The path to the toilet is just bad, it's dirty. And so instead of someone using that path, they'd rather improvise and use something in their house. And a lot of times the methods that they use are undignified. So something that would be proper is something that is dignified, something that gives them the independence to use the toilet alone, and such that they don't have to rely on caregivers, something that offers them privacy and a solution that does not expose them to water and sanitation related illnesses. Dafula also mentioned some of these toilets are dirty. And if you're a person who is mobility challenged and you're in a wheelchair, it means you can't just walk in normally, squat normally, considering most of these toilets are pit latrines. So if you were to use that toilet, it means the chances of you getting diseases such as cholera are very high. And one of the things I think it takes to actualize like an ideal sanitation situation is one taking a systems approach. And this means that, as say, if you're a designer or you're building an accessible bathroom, of course use standards and look at them to guide you, but make sure you include persons with disabilities from the onset. Encourage them, give them a voice to speak out and say what are their needs. Engage them in their decision-making processes, because no one knows what they need better than they do. And disabilities are very complex. It's not just one, like it's not one disability, it's like even a mobility challenge. Even with physical disabilities alone, it's a whole spectrum. There are people who are deaf, there are people who are blind, there are people who are autistic. So engaging the members of the community that you're building a solution for is very important. Making sure that implementers have engineers who can do inclusive buildings, have designers who are inclusive designers. Make sure that the people that are carrying out surveys, train them on carrying out surveys with persons with disabilities. Yeah. So just basically take a systems approach from start to finish in order to like find this ideal solution. And the second thing I would say is collaboration. You can't do it alone. And even with taking the systems approach, each player needs to take their small part and work on it. So for example, I'm an engineer, so I'm an innovator, so I'm very good at coming up with solutions and designs. But then you see at the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, even as I'm putting out my solution out there, I have to still try and fit into these other spaces. Like now, of course, involve them in decision making, have now to start figuring out the communication, because communication is important, the way you do your wording. Yeah, I have now trained people to capacity build. So I feel like that really slows down the progress, because now I have to do all these parts. But if I said I'm just designing, if someone else does capacity building of the staff, if someone else does capacity building of the PWDs, it means that we are able to move faster. And even for the people who are already implementing, just incorporating that aspect of inclusivity and accessibility, and bringing on board people who have that expertise, I think that will make us move faster, as opposed to everyone just working alone and trying to cover everything. Yeah.
Question? No, for me.
I want the next presenter.
What you asked? Yeah. Yes. He needs it.
So that is Judy. Judy, I want us to look at lack of adequate sanitation and hygiene facilities and their poor management, which puts children at risk and decrease the opportunity to be safe and healthy and thrive. So protection of children. All people are entitled to safe sanitation without discrimination, regardless of age, illness, associated with sanitation. We need to prevent the children from diarrhea. It's a common element, which in some areas ends up killing them. Basically, statistics shows that children are more disadvantaged when it comes to access in households, public places, and in institutions. So, in your experience, is sanitation a key element in children's rights? If yes, how can mechanisms be set in households and communities to enable the provision of sanitation rights for children? These are some of the questions that we ask our MSc students. So they're here today in public. Number two, how can children's rights approach in sanitation be adapted? And then number three, children are often agents of change and need to be involved. Do you agree? How would we catalyze the agency of children in sanitation services? I think we'll stop there. Just some quick, short answers. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And why I was asking for me to be guided is because if I start talking about children, we'll be and child protection, Dawafula knows me. Actually, he didn't say the ministry that owns him. His organization is affiliated to the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. So, so I've claimed him in that space. I would talk until the cows come home. Like I said, children are a big portion of the population. And whenever we do any kind of planning and give them out their interests, their participation, then we have a challenge there. And perhaps that's why there are challenges in this sector, because you've not asked the kind of questions that you're asking. So my answer is yes. Children are very, the rights to sanitation, they are very key to the well-being of children, to their protection. And unfortunately, they're usually left out because children are not at table. And sometimes when we say we want children at table, it looks very radical, but it isn't. It's just like, I can see a few who could have recently graduated from being children in this room, because by definition of a child, it is any individual who has not achieved the age of 18 years. And that is the definition according to our Children Act 2022. We have an Act of Parliament for children, and you'll find everything child protection basically in that act, because it's hot from the press. Remember 2022, I think it was July, that's when it was enacted into law. And it is a culmination of many years of practice, many years of improvement. So when I say it's a good piece of legislation, it has tried to bring on board a lot of things that were not there. For example, aligning it to the Constitution. The one we had of 2001 was not aligned to the Constitution for obvious reasons. So one of the reasons why we had to review that act was to bring it into alignment with the Constitution. And our Constitution, unlike the one before, mentions children. I'm bringing to the fore why we really need to actively think about children in whichever sector we are. Now we are talking about sanitation. We must bring the issues of children to the fore. What are their interests? What are their best interests? When we design latrines, for example, accessibility, and I think my colleague Dawafula has really talked into accessibility. When we talk about wash basins, we saw it during the time of COVID. They were up there. How did we expect our children to reach? Even in institutions that are meant for children, you'll find we still have the adult level of hand washing basins. And we have totos up to here. Yet, when we have them in those institutions, are they meant to stay in those institutions forever? No. In fact, right now, as a government, we are saying children belong to community. So even before, and we forgot, because when we put them in institutions, we tend to forget them there and throw away the key. But 18 comes, and you start looking at each other, where do these children go? Because we lost contact with the community. Now the community, we are saying, because now the new approach for government is that children belong to families and community. If it means that if a child is in an institution, it's for the shortest time possible. So when they are there in that, for the shortest time possible, the word 3 years has been used, and within 10 years altogether, the ones I called charitable children institutions will no longer be there, but we have the 10 years. When they are there, whenever they're in any institution for child protection, we are saying we are preparing them for community. Now, two things. In this institution, we teach them how to live dignified life. Do they clean after themselves? Do they wash their hands? Do they dispose of fecal waste properly? So that now when they come to community, they are dignified human beings. They are able to fit, because we are having them there so that they can become useful members of society. Sindio? So if we don't teach them to do these things, they come to society and they know how to do their things behind the bush. For men, even a wall works. When we teach them, we don't teach them that you have to be dignified about that, and they come and do it in community, then they are more marginalized, because they will keep on being pushed further from, oh, huyu anafanya hivi sababu, I believe you understand Kiswahili. sababu ametoka kwa ile institution. When I think of rehabilitation schools, I think I used my time of introduction also to introduce where I work. Yeah? Rehabilitation schools, for example, we have children who have come into conflict with the law. So they have offended. Some of them have done heinous acts of aggression, usually in the company of adults. So when you find a child has been, maybe they've been charged alongside an adult, usually they'll end up in a rehabilitation school. And so already there's a stigma around them. People in the community know, yet they can't stay in the institution forever, they have to go back. So what do we teach them when they are there? To make sure, because the aim is really not punishment. The aim is to make sure that these people come back and they are not marginalized. They are not, again, they don't retain that title of vulnerability. They are not vulnerable. We want them to come out to be able to contribute to society, to become contributing members of society. So when you look at the instruments around child protection, they delve into the area of survival, for example. If you look at, because child protection is all those things that are formal and they are guided by law and other formal directions to ensure that children are not harmed, that children are able to be protected from things like child labor, things like child abuse, and all that. And when I keep insisting that children are any individual who has not attained the age of 18, and we classify them as vulnerable because that is a vulnerable age. A child can become radicalized. I think you've seen that. You saw the Bible thumping on a clip that was circulating. They tell you we are not supposed to go to school because somebody has taken time to radicalize their thinking. So when you think of child and we say vulnerable, people are like, but my child is eating a full and balanced diet, blah, blah. But within that time before they get into the age of majority, then they are bound to meet things that impact them in a way that perhaps an adult would not be impacted. So they need that care. So we have international instruments that speak into the whole arena of the well-being of a child and protecting them and making sure that they develop to become useful members of society. So we have the UNCRC. I would encourage you for your further readings. Look at the UNCRC, United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, as one of the biggest instruments. I think they say it's the most highly signed up instrument on the UN in the world. So when you look at it, you'll find that there are survival rights, there are protection rights, and there are child participation rights that are enshrined in that. And it will guide you in whichever sector you are to show how you get to ensure that the survival rights of the child are not impacted negatively and that the child participates. And when these are not fulfilled, then you'll find the child becomes subject to needing child protection. Because, for example, when we build the toilets, I think I alluded this, when the toilet is built maybe very far in a bushy place, studies have shown, and there was the one on I remember the title of 2019, we were studying how abuse of children, yeah? It showed that some of the areas that are supposed to be safe places where a child can go and be secure and do their thing turn out to be the areas where they are abused. And it happens even in the informal settlements where children go to the toilet, a man will waylay a girl. And even in the toilet itself or in the washroom, stuff happens that render this child now to become in need of care and protection. They've been abused, they've been, all those things have happened to them. And so that is the worst sort of indignity you can think about, that this person was answering to a call of nature, but somebody has taken advantage. Because of the way, how did you design, my engineer? You put it very behind there, but it meant it's a place where the child can be waylaid. So issues of then child protection become important because somebody has now kutetea haki ya huyo mtoto, but the damage has already been done. So when we think about waste disposal and all those things, we are thinking about dignity of the users of those services. And he said the majority of the population is the children. We are talking about accessibility. My colleague talked about it very well. So even think about the general population of children. How are they able to access these things without exposing them to abuse and things like that? So the best interests, we have to consider the best interests of the children, even as we are constructing, even as we are making these to be accessible, to be available to them. And in the new Act for Children, we are now talking more than male and female. There is also mention of the intersex. So when we are thinking, and now when we change from the disabled, we also have to bring out to the fore the issue of the intersex child. These are the ones, not the ones, the L something, something. Sometimes they add an I there to get credibility and buy-in. But intersex, usually they don't have it, but sometimes they will include it. Intersex is where there is that biological, it's not decided whether they are male or female. So the Act is requiring that we bear those children in mind, even in our own institution. And those of you who are involved in, even in the charitable children institutions, you have to make available facilities for that category of children. So it's not enough just to have male, female. We also have to now think about the intersex, because they are recognized in law. I think innovations, finally, as I come to a conclusion, I'm very happy about innovations, but I believe innovations usually will come from people. Sometimes I hear a lot of stealing of innovations, because sometimes they are made by people even who are very junior in the community, people who are just very young. So I want to believe that my colleague in the Ministry of Education will speak into it, because sometimes children, because of their own needs, are able to come out with very good innovations. What do we do with them? And then finally, there are already innovations that favor children. Do we put them aside? Because, well, children don't have the money. Well, children also don't have a vote, and sometimes that works against us. And maybe that's why we have some of the problems that we have as a society, because they don't have that vote. I believe if children voted, things would be a lot different. But when you're thinking, I just wanted you to be at the forefront. Think children. They may not be the pass holders, but they are a very critical population in numbers, majority, so we cannot afford to ignore them. I think I'll stop there, moderator. Thank you so much.
Quickly move over to our last panelist. Lydia, I want us to go through an area here. So I'll give the background information. Studies have shown that sanitation has a direct correlation with regular school attendance. Evidence has shown there is a reduction of diarrhea and respiratory infection in students with improved sanitation facilities. According to UNICEF, the Kenyan office here, many schools do not have basic sanitation facilities, and this is further compounded in rural areas who are already disadvantaged by other factors, e.g. distance to school, poverty is more prevalent, competing cause, like etc., house costs, etc. Statistics from UNICEF show that about 84% of schools in rural areas do not have sufficient sanitation facilities. Without doubt, good sanitation provides better education outcomes, thus contributes to inclusive, sustainable development by increasing enrollment to schools. Ensuring that sanitation in schools protects the rights and preserves the dignity of children by providing them with access to safe, acceptable, and reliable services is non-discriminatory and ensures equitable access to quality education, helps create conducive learning environments, prevents diseases, promotes health and well-being by providing sustainable infrastructure, which includes operation, maintenance, and management as mandated by the government. Now, in your experience, Has the government been keen on the mandate as part of academic promotion, just like developing curriculum? Number 2, that is yes or no. Answer. Number 2, is sanitation in schools taken with seriousness it deserves? If not, what has been the effect? Number 3, in your opinion, what needs to be done and why? And by who? Is it legislation, financing, guidelines, or enforcement that needs to be strengthened? And finally, what would it take to ensure sufficient sanitation facilities in schools and institutions? We have sufficient sanitation facilities in schools and institutions, and basically what needs to be considered. Thank you. So many questions, but with very short answers.
So thank you very much for your very deep questions. The first one is yes, but it will do me no justice not to say what government is doing. So there are many things, yes, government is doing its best. The beauty is all of us here have been students in our schools, and we know the situation of sanitation in our schools. It has not changed much since you left school. So reflect on your school where you are. However, many things are coming in, and there has been a lot of advocacy. If there is an area that development partners and everyone is working towards, is to ensure that WASH is a key component in our schools and institutions. In the Department of Basic Education, where I work, we work with children. So when she's talking about children, we are speaking the same language, because we have up to those ones below 18, up to Form 4. Apart from those others we work with who are in colleges, in diploma colleges. And I'll speak on a few things that government is doing. One, we know that, I'll start with the curriculum. If a learner does not know hygiene, if a child does not understand, I need to wash my hands when I go to the toilet, then it cannot work. So the curriculum has institutionalized hygiene. And we have, right now, under the competency-based curriculum, we have learning areas that are directly on that area. From grade 1 to 3, we have a learning area called, these days we don't talk about subjects. So when you hear a learning area, I'm actually talking about a subject. A learning area, a learning area called hygiene and nutrition that graduates to home science, health education. And it's a whole strand. And these days we talk about strands, we don't talk about topics. So when I talk about some of this language, go with me. So that is a strand that runs from ECD all the way to senior school. And it means that at every single stage, a child is learning hygiene, health, nutrition, and all that takes. It is a major win. It was not there before. It was here and there, here and there. The other thing that the government has done is to provide sanitary towels for teenage girls. It is not adequate though, but at least we have some emergency pads in the office that can be given. But what the government provides is 3 pads for a girl per term, which is not adequate, obviously, because one pad of 8 cannot cater for a teenage girl who has to have 3-4 days. I'm glad sisters are here, you understand. But it's better than nothing. It's better than what they were using before. So there is a stopgap measure, because we understand menstruation, toilets, and all that have got all to do with learning. They play a major silent but extremely critical role. The other thing that the government has done is to ensure that we have 5 dimensions of quality in a school. One of the dimensions on school infrastructure. And under school infrastructure, toilets play a key role. Water play a key role. There are ratios that schools must keep according to the Ministry of Health. That is 1 toilet to 25, 1 toilet for girls, and 1 toilet to 30 per urinal. I believe all of us here understand those ratios. And also the issue of having water points, 1:50. And I can tell you, every now and again, government is trying. Are we far? We are far, but we are getting there. Every every time a child gets capitation, because remember, government pays school fees for primary and secondary school students, it gives something called RMI. RMI what is RMI? Repair, maintenance, and? I'm expecting you to know a little of these things. You don't know. So this is a little money, like 5 shillings per child, for repair and maintenance, for the toilet, the latch, some of those things that are very critical, that the toilet must be this and the other. Our government has come together with other development partners, and this place, UNICEF, that is almost our other arm, that has come up with a manual on WASH. I hope that you all know that there is a manual for WASH for schools in Kenya. And what it does, it gives from the ratios to the type of toilets required, the size of the aperture, if it's lower children, separation of gender and also the age of children. It is all included there. It also gives the engineering part of how a toilet should look like, including the accessible toilets. I'll never call them disability toilets again. We are going to change our things because it all starts from school. It all starts from school. What you learn in school is what you keep. So we need to change all those terminologies. So there is that manual. And that manual graduates to come up with a lot of activity books on menstrual health management for learners, obviously, because they're activity books. And also we have a guide, teacher's guide for it. Government has insisted. We in the Directorate of Quality Assurance insist that almost every school has a health club, because it is within the health club. It's not enough, it's not adequate to do what you do in school, in class. So if there was a health club, we have girl guiding, we have scouts, we have various channels for teaching hygiene. The other thing that government has done is to give water tanks to schools, and in particular in ASO areas. Water connectivity, together with the Ministry of Water, is a key component, and every time and again, there is something being done. The other thing I would say is about other programs. For example, we are having a program with World Bank called Kenya Primary Education Equity in Learning. One of the components is school inputs, and in school inputs we have toilets. So I want to say this. By and large, government, Ministry of Education understands the position of WASH to learning. The correlation cannot be denied. Whether it's adequate, no, it's not adequate. Is there work to do? A lot of work to do. Is it government's responsibility alone? No. It is a collaboration of us all. So has it been taken seriously? Yes and no, depending on how sensitive is the teacher. In our forums, you find that the school is the head teacher, and the head teacher becomes the school. In gender and in age. When I say gender, you will find out that girls' schools have better sanitation than boys' schools. So gender-wise, girls' schools will have cleaner, safer, more private than boys. Whose business is that? All of us. We need to, our culture, where we are coming from, where we think that a boy can go, what Madame said here, the world can do. What is it we are mentoring the boys out there? When they see their fathers at the bush, they imagine the bush is also the school. So when you go to boys' schools around the dorm, and those of you here who've been in those dormitories, you know what you did. Around the dorms, you made the dorm have a lot of ammonia there, because the toilets maybe were far, they were not clean, because when the toilets are not accessible and they are not interesting to go to, children will always look for an alternative, and more so younger children. Also the toilets age-wise, where schools don't separate the younger children from the older children, it becomes trouble again. So it is, all those things have to be put in place. So it is taken seriously where the head teacher is serious about sanitation. And that calls for a lot of sensitization. When you involve children, I really love what she's saying about children. Children, if you involve them, they will keep those toilets clean. When they know why the toilets should be clean, if you offer them water, protective gear, they're going to make sure their toilets are clean. And I can give examples of schools where children have been involved in their own health. And those schools are doing marvelously well when it comes to children not missing school because of diarrhea, because of sicknesses and all that, including menstrual hygiene, because when you don't teach girls what to do with it, they do it. They can throw anywhere. Finally, I can see the moderator saying time is up. What can be done? Sensitization, sensitization, sensitization. I will not be tired of that. Because if we can have adequate funding, because that's what misses. After we have done the manuals, we have done the activity books, we have done everything, have we told the user what to do with it? So the issue of sensitizing the person who is supposed to implement is critical. Training them on the use of the manual is critical. And funds are never available. Because Kenyans will be asking the ministry, we don't have books, and you're here telling us about sanitary pads. And therefore, we need more water points, more hygiene education, more health clubs in every school. Asante sana.
Thank you very much. We are doing very well. We have just operated outside our time by about 3 minutes. It's not bad, based on African standards. Now, I want us to just have 1 or 2 questions, clarification, contributions. You will take the first question. Let's take all the questions and then we'll stop there. The second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one, and we close there. The sixth one, okay. I will moderate your questions. Make sure that you don't bombard one person with questions. So if you have a question and it's been responded to, just accept and say pass. So you remember your numbers, isn't it? There's something that I want to say. I had an opportunity to be a head of department in JKUAT, chairman of department. That was the longest time, the most challenging time that I ever had in my life. To an extent that I'm not interested in university management. I am the kind of a person who is very close to students. And those of you who are my students will know we quarrel and agree and we continue. What you have said has thrown me back to the drawing board. You mean in the universities we admit children in first year? Children. I'll talk to my VC. There is a problem. There is a big problem. If we are admitting children, because some of them come without IDs, which means they are less than 18. Now, actually, your parents. Sindio? We are expecting them in September. Sindio? Take care of your children. Nikubaya. Who is the first one? There is a serious problem because we really used to struggle because you are giving us these children and we are not prepared.
Okay, so I'm Virginia Nanetia from Kenya Water Institute. I'm Virginia Nanetia from Kenya Water Institute. He was my lecturer at JKUAT. And so I want to comment and give an input. First, I would like to appreciate the Ministry of Education. I would like to reiterate that they are really working. Like right now, they have partnered with the Ministry of Education to increase the sensitization. So we have a water quality symposium where we put out a call to the basic education children, a small competition just to see how they understand and appreciate what things about water, especially on water quality. So I would like to welcome you. Also, you're welcome to that symposium and see how children are responding on matters water and sanitation. So that is just a comment. And also, I would like to encourage, now that we are in the space of education, encourage the ministry to engage more on collaboration with other institutions which are probably linked to the basic education sphere. So, for example, universities have innovation and research, so you can do more collaborations which will ease it in terms of sensitization and also increase funding, because most research are geared towards funding. So those are the comments I had.
Thank you very much. Those are great comments, and I think we need to engage more on the forthcoming symposium, because I believe you all have children. Encourage those children to come up with innovations. They can tell you something that you really don't know, and you might never know.
Okay. Can I continue? Okay. Thank you so much. My name is Damaris Ochanda. I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Nursing, Midwifery and Paramedical Sciences of Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology in Kakamega. I want to appreciate the panelists. You have actually shared a lot of information and given us the insight on the sanitation needs, particularly for the vulnerable groups. My first question goes to Mr. Leonard. This is concerning people with disabilities. You highlighted so much on the challenges and the requirements of their sanitation, sanitary needs, particularly focusing on public facilities. You did not talk about the informal areas. Are there challenges that people with disabilities face in the informal areas, particularly with their sanitation, and what is your directorate doing about it? Coming to, this can be answered by either Judy or Lydia. This is about the preschoolers, and I am happy that Lydia did mention something about it. Given that I'm in the rural area, I've visited some primary schools, and some of the primary schools actually host the preschoolers. The ones, the baby class, PP1, PP2. And when you go to those schools, you find they have, they share the same latrines with the rest of the children. Is the government doing anything about it, or do we have a policy to take care of these small children, particularly where we have latrines? Then lastly, when it comes to girls, with regard to menstrual hygiene management, Lydia has mentioned about the pads. And when it comes to menstrual hygiene management, I think it is more than that. Does the ministry have strategies to ensure there's a safe place, a private place, even for, apart from changing, even for washing? There are points in time you need to clean yourself. Is there any plan for that? I've gone to some schools, they have a bathroom, a washroom, and a toilet separately for the girls. But this is just like 1 in 100. Are there strategies for that? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who will take? Very quick, short answer, sir.
Yes. Good. Thank you, madam. When it comes to water and sanitation in informal areas, that's where now we have biggest problem. You know, most of these facilities are shared facilities. One, that's a big challenge. Two, of course, the charges. There are some charges you need to pay for you to access. Like it's a community toilet, let's say, something like that. There's some charges. And in terms of accessibility, I have seen most of informal settlement. We don't have even ramps in those toilets. It's just stairs, which means that now if I'm a person on a wheelchair, I might not be able to access it because it's just stairs. And those stairs are very inaccessible. So what we are encouraging, especially if in informal sectors, we encourage especially the devolved government, the county government, the like, if they could come up with public toilets that are accessible and also friendly. Thank you.
I think I would comment on the issue of girls and menstrual hygiene, but allow me to be a little bit outside. I'll leave the institutions part to Ministry of Education. My name's Sekia. But there's something I would like to point out about, I mentioned a little bit about the possibility and the potential for child right abuse around the menstrual area. There is something called sex for pads. I don't know how many of you have heard about it. So that's just what I would like us to be aware of. How does this then become to be what it is? That girls exchange sex so that they can get pads, but it is happening, and for us that's defilement. But when you talk to the girl, it was an exchange of something for something. So I just wanted to bring that to the fore. But about the institutions?
Okay, thank you for your question. Directly to say that schools have guidelines on how to do toilets per age and per gender. Where you find it's not there is because of ignorance or thinking it's not important, and therefore they require constant reminder. Kindly, when you go back to that school any other time, feel obliged to ask, why don't you have toilets for preschoolers? Feel obliged, just ask. The other question is the bathroom. The bathroom is also a requirement, and not only the bathroom, water is a requirement in those bathrooms. And number two, not only that, the waste management, schools are supposed to come up with ways of discarding the waste management, the soil pads, and they should not be thrown in the latrine, because the latrine fills up with all that. They're supposed to have a separate way of discarding that. Recently, I was in a workshop with the Ministry of Health where they were saying schools can actually use the nearest health center to be able to collect the soiled pads and take them to the incinerators, because only a few schools have them. So the issue of waste management when it comes to menstrual health management is a critical issue that we all need to deal with. Thank you.
Yeah, the next, please make sure that you sign the attendance sheet. Tea is already being served, and I'm very worried because I'm so hungry, but let me give you. I don't know what to do and where to start from.
Okay. My questions are very straightforward. One to Joki. You spoke about Joki, the second one. Yes. You spoke about sanitation for institutions, especially children. So my concern is, what are you doing about sanitation for street families, where there are also so many children? What is being done about that? And the second one is to Sylvia. You spoke about provision of diapers. Are you also talking about disposal of the same, considering where those diapers are disposed and what happens to the environment?
Ndio hayo sasa, you are next. Alafu, can we take these two questions and then they all answer at the same time? You have one.
Okay. One question, one comment. My first question, I'm Anthony from Limuru. I would like from Limuru. Yes. My first question is about disability. Is there a way you can bring about when you are building, when you have building coming up, you can bring the wash and basins down so that they can accommodate everyone? If I'll go to a washroom and I'll find a wash and basin at maybe 1.5 foot, maybe I'll think it's for a child. But deep down, the engineers and the technicians, they will have designed that to accommodate everyone. That will be the first one. And the second one, it's about education and children. I think she made a comment that nowadays you'll go to girls' schools and you'll find they are very clean than the boys' schools. I think it's because of late we have had more concentration on the girls more than the boys. And the gap is now becoming a bit big. And that's the reason why, even when in the past like a year, when we had strikes, it's more related to boys' schools more than the girls' schools, because everybody concentrated more on the girls than the boys. Now it has shifted. Now the boys, nobody's looking after the boy anymore, and the whole limelight's about the girl. So I think maybe they would sensitize more on the boys also, so that we can break the gap, and at least we can be at the same level. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Your first question is thought-provoking. I'm also challenged, and it's kind of, for all of us, it should appear in the white paper. We need to think of how we can be able to set up a wash basin that you can, you know.
Thank you so much, moderator. My name is Faith Masika, and I work for a project called Western Kenya Sanitation Project. We work in the 8 counties of Western and Nyanza, and we implement sanitation and menstrual hygiene management. And I would just like to concur with what the lady on the far end has said about basic education and the sanitation status of primary schools in Kenya. It all starts with the head teacher. And I'll give us an example of a school called Yala Primary School in Siaya. And the head teacher is so keen on sanitation and hygiene, in that he even has a list of all girls who are menstruating in his school. And he has teachers who are in charge of that. They talk to the girls and also the boys, because he's raised an aspect of boys being left out. In many cases, when you go to schools, we always call the girls aside and we talk to them about hygiene, leaving out the boys. So for us as a project, we are inclusive. We are discussing issues of sanitation and hygiene with boys and girls. And my question was now on the 5 shillings that has been allocated for repair and maintenance. Is there a possibility, it might be something that is beyond us, but can we start advocating and lobbying for that amount to be increased to maybe something that is meaningful that can do repairs? Because we're not talking of sanitation facilities that are female friendly, that will cater for the menstrual needs of girls. Then it requires like an overhaul, like just maybe construction of other facilities or huge maintenance work that will require a lot of money. And that will require like now that 5 shillings to be increased. Yes, as a project, as private sector, as donors, we are doing much more just to improve on the sanitation status of schools, but also the government has also just to increase that percentage. And there are instances whereby even head teachers will just tell you, hii 5 shillings haitoshi na nimeallocate maybe kwa chakula. Haijaenda kufanya ile kazi ilikuwa imekuwa set aside kufanya. Otherwise, I'm grateful. And for us, we are also focusing on how to handle menstrual waste. Menstrual waste is a big problem that is not only affecting institutions, but also the general public. And the first thing is, how do we classify menstrual waste? Is it a solid waste? Is it a medical waste? Is it an infectious waste? So as a project, we are working with the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education and Environment to develop guidelines on how to handle menstrual waste. So once that is in place, then even schools, it will be easier for schools to be able to know how they are going to handle menstrual waste in their institutions. Thank you so much.
Wow. I will not allow any more questions, but you can probably write down the questions in a piece of paper and share them with me. I'll be able to help you get the answer to that question. Meanwhile, we are supposed to be winding up, but I'll request my colleagues just to, this is how we are going to do it. Questions have been asked. There were how many? 3 of them, isn't it? So I'll start from here, respond to any that you have, then you pass the mic so that we wind up.
Thank you. I want to respond on the issue of hand washing basin. I talked about that when it comes to accessibility, we have a standard for built environment. It's ISO 21542 2011. And that standard has provision for what is an accessible hand washing areas. And in ideal situation, when we are putting up hand washing areas, we need to have of various height, so that now if I'm a person of short stature, I can still use that one. Then somebody else who is taller than me has his own at least 3 hand washing basins of various heights, so that it's accommodative for all persons of various heights and disability. Thank you.
So to answer the question, your question on diapers, we actually don't provide disposable diapers, we provide cloth diapers. And these are cloth diapers that can be used by a child from the months of 3 to 3 years. And they can be used for up to 3 children before like the lifespan of the diapers is like it's no longer deemed like usable. And on top of just providing the diapers, we also provide a laundering service. So we've partnered with Nairobi Hospital, and what we're able to do is collect diapers from our clients, take them to the laundry service where they are laundered. And the laundry service there, first of all, we went with Nairobi Hospital because, of course, hygiene standards, they're disinfected. And second of all, they use machines that save water. They actually recycle water and they're very energy efficient. Yes, so our diapers are cloth diapers, so we don't dispose them. And then I'll sneak in a question. So my question is to everyone on the panel, so from the council to the different ministries, what are you doing to support entrepreneurs, innovators who are coming up with solutions that can serve like the different target groups, people with disabilities and their children? Because we talk about challenges a lot, year in, year out, you're talking about the same challenges, but we have entrepreneurs who are coming up with solutions again, year in, year out. But sometimes I know people who come in, they stay 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and just because of all the barriers of just entering the space, then they leave. So it means these are solutions that would have been beneficial to the community, but they're not benefiting the community now because just people are giving up along the way. So either it's the barriers or lack of information. Maybe there are things that are done that people in the private sector are not aware about, especially SMEs, to know like how are you supporting these people in the private sector to bring the solutions to the communities.
Thank you very much. I'll quickly just try to touch on the sanitation for street families. I think Sister asked about it. I think we have what is called the Street Families Trust Fund. That would be the best stop to get a concrete answer. But I would just say that one, families really should not be living on the streets. But as a conscionable society, when they find themselves there, and again for the short time before they are resettled, then they should have access to dignified place to wash and dispose. So the Street Families Trust Fund and the local county government jointly should be able to provide something for them when they are there. So I think that's where the mandate lies. Yeah. Thank you. Then quickly on the boy child, I have sons. Yeah, I agree with those sentiments. But again, when we go back to where this conversation with the girl came in, I think she alluded to the fact that there were issues of menstruation. It was assumed, well, boys don't go through that, so the girls were taken aside. There are issues of FGM, for example, harmful cultural practices tend to have a very brutal hand on the girl child. So again, the focus. But again, when we now talk about the inclusiveness I have found situations where FGM, for example, initiatives targeted the girls and their mothers, leaving out the men. But lately it's been discovered that the men are drivers because it's a man who says about the dowry or lack of it and whether a girl or not, she's laughing, has undergone that. So I think there is a need now to refocus and see how we can all have a win-win situations. Yeah, I think that's all I could see. So in any initiative, well, even if, like what your organization has done, the boy, what role does the boy? Boys are the ones, when the girl has had an accident, they will laugh. But when you bring them on board, they're the ones who give the girl a sweater, anajifunika vizuri until so she's dignified in that process. And they know that happens. But when they don't have that exposure, when you are married and something has happened, you decide this girl was never taught she should go back to her mother. But if you had ever helped a girl with a jacket or a sweater around, then it's no big deal and you're able to handle it. Then on what to do, finally, on how we can make use of innovations. Thank you very much, because you are now coming to where there's so many innovations, but we hardly ever hear about them. In the ministries, there are open door policies. Come talk to our peers, indicate very clearly what you want to talk about. Come to the Directorate of Children's Services, talk about them. We have institutions. What can we use from from you. When it comes to procurement, there is the 30% that is set aside for women and young persons. You know, there is that one. Yeah, the AGPO. Whenever there are those, just come and know where can you come in. Yeah, don't just sit and think government is doing so many things. You have something, come, we talk about it, and we see, does it work for us? And if it doesn't work for us or we don't, we say, oh, we know somebody. Like I've said, county government, I think there is room for that. So we'll help to network. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm always the last here, so I'm quickly putting things together. So about the money, about the 5 shillings. Government always provides infrastructure money for toilets. And this money comes through the usual ministry, or it will come from the national CDF. National CDF is money for construction. It does not mean it's money for the MP. It is money for schools. And that's why they build toilets and classrooms, because there is nowhere else they can use that money for, because everything else is devolved, apart from education and security. However, it depends on the school board and how they connect to the Mheshimiwa. The RMI I'm talking about is money for repair, the latch that is broken, the door that has come off. So we should not be having schools that are having toilets, doors that are not there, and yet we have. Sensitization is required. The other thing I want to say is this, from her angle about innovations and all, the Ministry of Education partners with many partners, many development partners. Maybe what they do not know is how to go about it. So in the Ministry of Education, we vet partners, we vet development partners. You apply to the Directorate of Partnerships and Policy. Once you do that, they will invite you. They invite everybody. Just come. What do you want to show us? And then they are vetted. So they will be vetting you on what is it that you're providing. Is it something usable for us? Is it sustainable? As we are critical on sustainability, and it should not cost us a shilling. It should just cost you because you want to come to this space. And where do you want to come to? Where do you want to work? It's important for, like my sister has said here, don't stay away there and say government is not doing anything. You have not walked into the office and told don't come. So government is always open for connectivity. We are in the era of PPP, right? Public-private partnerships. And government is very critical. Education is a big animal. So I would just want to encourage all of us who are in different institutions. I can see we are in different spaces. My question would be, have you come and ask the government, the Ministry of Education, to work with you? For the ministries, we work together, Ministry of Water, Ministry of Health, and all other Ministry of Children. We are all together in that space. Thank you very much for this chance. Asante sana.
Karibuni sana. Let's give all of us a clap. I used to be a government officer, so what she has said, I normally just walk to any ministry. I look for the director, not the PS, the director. In the Ministry of Education, we have a director general. And they'll always offer you tea. So Kwanza, chai, next, the issue. Presentation to you. So you will give them, So, I want us to break for tea, but before that, just a token of appreciation from the organizers, each of the panelists. So, what is the procedure? I'm an engineer, I can grab all of them and... Oh.
Yeah, so thank you so much, everyone, for effectively participating. Sorry? Yeah, for effectively participating in this meeting. And I will start with Lydia. Lydia, thank you so much. That was very innovative. Thank you. Madam Judy, asante sana. Yeah. My dear Sylvia, well done. Thank you. Thank you, sir. You are the only male here. Yeah. But you are not intimidated. Thank you so much. And for the moderator, we'll also have to gift him because it was the hardest job to moderate this kind of a group.
And I really enjoyed it. Yeah. Unfortunately, I would want all of them to congregate again. I don't know where and when because we've not finished. Isn't it? thank you so much. I think we are looking forward to more engagement.
Hello, everybody. My name is my name is Anthony Maluki. I am a lawyer in the human rights field, formerly from Kenya Human Rights Commission. I work mostly in the field in terms of community outreach and social protections, and I have experience mostly dealing with refugee communities and other vulnerable persons. Thank you.
Good, I don't know whether it is morning or afternoon. Good morning, I'm Peter Biwott. I'm the Managing Director of Eldoret Water and Sanitation Company. By profession, I'm an economist. I've worked in private and public sectors for the last 19 years, both in Kenya and other countries. This is my 1.5 years in the water sector, having come from government agencies in the promotion areas, and also I've worked with private sector, like chambers of commerce and the rest. I am currently pursuing a PhD in environmental economics. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. I'm Zaituni Kanenje. I work for Nakuru Water and Sanitation Company as the low-income consumers manager. I've been in the company for the last more than 10 years, just addressing issues to do with informal or proper areas. In the discussions that we've been having since yesterday, it's all about in proper areas, and that is the area that I enjoy most working in. I have a master's in community development. I have worked with different partners in WASH when it comes to proper strategies and implementation.
Hi everyone. My name is Annabelle Waitito, and I'm working with Big Five Africa. It's a private company that is dealing in the water and sanitation sector. I have been in the water sector for a couple of years now, and more looking into the issues of gender and social inclusion, but also looking at performance in the water sector. Yeah, looking forward to the interaction.
Good afternoon. I hope so. It's a bit morning, but it's okay. My name is Bethsheba Utuga. I'm the founding director of Ahadi Reusable Pads. I've seen most of the players in this come from institutions, but we are a social enterprise. We provide reusable sanitary pads. And as a result of that, we found that there are so many gaps, we are trying to get into the space, of which I know at the end of my session, we'll have picked up what we do. So I'm very glad to be here. I'm a teacher by profession. I've taught in both secondary and primary schools. And right now, I'm fully engaged in the issue and the practice of menstrual health. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We will go straight to the discussion on sanitation, youth, and gender. And I have several questions that we are going to share with the panelists. If you have any questions, you can note them down, and towards the end, we will have a question and answer session. Since yesterday, we've been talking about sanitation, looking at accountability, looking at how we can be able to identify the gaps that are within sanitation space, and what are the strategies that we can use. It is so hard to talk about this without having a deliberate discussion on inclusivity, particularly focusing on the youth and gender. To start us off with this discussion, I'll move to you, Annabelle. Looking at sanitation, particularly WASH, and focusing on the gender issue, what do you think are some of the gaps within the strategies that we have, within the sanitation frameworks that we have with regard to addressing issues of gender? Then secondly, what is your take on participation of women in WASH governance? Yeah.
Yeah, when we talk about gender, we are looking at basically how we can have equitable access to sanitation for both men and women. And in majority of the cases, it's the issue of equity and equality. Equity in the sense that there's so many historical injustices that need to be addressed. And there are also so many inequalities that take place because of the many differences between men and women, but also because of the socio-cultural norms and practices. But also there are also biological aspects that need to be addressed. So it's good to talk about the challenges so that we can be able to see, basically what are the key gaps. And I think to say that poor sanitation and the related burdens are quite clear in our minds. And I think almost everybody is saying that, we are so burdened. Even we are talking about the counties that are burdened by this inadequate access to sanitation, in this country. I think yesterday we were told there are 15 of them. But these burdens are not equitably shared between men and women, and I think this is why the gender issues come on board. So we talk about social, quite a number of, social, economic, but we are also talking about opportunity costs that are related to inadequate access to sanitation. So who is bearing these costs? I remember one time the World Bank did a very good write-up trying to sort of show in monetary terms, what do those costs and what do these burdens mean? And the question is, who then is bearing the greatest burden between men and women? And because of what I have said, the biological, but also the cultural and social norms, then women seem to bear majority of these costs. When it comes to sanitation, we always say that it is dignity. When we say that water is life. And so what you find in majority of the cases is that inadequate access to sanitation means that those who do not have access to sanitation feel indignified, and this has an implication in terms of development, in the sense that if you don't feel dignified, you have issues to do with your self-esteem, with your with your ability to develop equitably with someone who has got access to sanitation. And I think that has been discussed quite a lot. We have even talked about menstrual hygiene. And the moment you do not have access to sanitary pads, it has huge implications on the way you develop, in the sense that when you go to school and you cannot access those sanitary pads, then it also means that you're likely to drop out of school, or you're likely to miss out on some classes. So what does that mean? Is that you're not on a level playing ground with the rest of the students who are there with you. When it comes to economic costs, we are talking about how much are we incurring because we do not have access to sanitation. And economically, you find that women bear the burden of meeting the cost, whether it is medication, they also meet the costs that are related with downtime. You can't go to work because your child is sick, and is sick because of drunk, water that is not safe. You're talking about, all sorts of, like sort of costs that are related with that. Who is actually going to be bearing? So downtime is a critical issue, in the sense that the other thing of, and what it translates to, is that you're also likely to lose opportunities. And so the opportunity costs are also borne by women. Because you see what happens is that when you cannot have access to sanitation, the opportunities even for work are not possible. And I know that I have gone to a company where we were doing an assessment, and we were talking to women, and they said that, there has been a lot of women falling out of job. Why? Because sanitation was so deplorable. It was pathetic. So we had to talk with the management. But basically what we are saying is that inequalities are there. And while the problem is the same, it is the same situation, but different impacts on both men and women. And so basically, when we talk about this, I think we are saying that it's going to be very important for us to think about how do we then design sanitation facilities and sanitation intervention in such a way that we understand what men and women require. You see, we have a habit of having to go and determine what the community wants. But I think it becomes very important for us to say that we want to listen what the challenges and the gaps are. Why is it that sometimes we have sanitation facilities, but we are still seeing that there are so many people who do not have access? And so what we normally say is that for us to be able to address issues of gender and sanitation, it becomes very important for us to think about how do we understand those issues. And this is why we always encourage, conduct your gender analysis, understand what are the gaps, understand what are the underlying factors that are that are resulting to the situation that is there. And then very important for you to think about how do we deliberately address those issues, including issues of participation, because there are many issues that will cause women not to participate. And so the other thing, of course, is to also think about just basically the aspect of how do we engender sanitation, and just making sure that, all the cultural norms, because they find their way into the organizations, how do we begin to change institutional mindsets so that the cultural norms, the stereotypes, then become addressed within institutional frameworks, and then we are able to address and respond to the issues of gender inequalities, even in sanitation. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. So you've commented on how, or rather you mentioned on how sanitation is recognized as a human right. So now the question about how to go and adopt a human rights-based approach towards providing sanitation services. Now that would have to be predicated on the idea of inclusivity, because human rights, as we all know, are universal. So it makes it so that we need to take into consideration and observe the vulnerable groups that are usually put on the sidelines, the minority groups that are there usually in the country. And that has to involve all, throughout all the stages of the value chain, and as well as recognizing, as we are going through creating value through the value chain, acknowledging that we do not cause any situations that impede human rights throughout the process. So, for example, when we look at the early stages in collection and transportation, a lot of this is done by youth, but then it's done in the informal sector. They do not have adequate protections often enough. When it comes to the employment right, they're often not protected. So in as much as we are doing, things to protect, to create sanitation networks throughout, we need to ensure that human rights are also being protected, that aren't necessarily directly sanitation based, that aren't necessarily water-based. Enough has been mentioned here about women and education and their menstrual cycle when they're at school. That's a sanitation issue that directly affects people's ability to access their right towards education. When we talk about people who suffer from sanitation health and sanitation-related illnesses, and as a result of that, that is a direct impact of lack of their access to health and sanitation, impeding their access to the right to life. So on how we can actually move towards solving that, the first one is one of enforcement of the laws that we already have in place. We already have fairly exhaustive frameworks in a lot of places talking about how do we, what are the prescribed rules. We have WASH guidelines for schools. We have guidelines that are there to direct how waste is to be managed in hospitals. But how do we improve the regulatory and the enforcement mechanisms to ensure that those regulations that are currently in place are actually enforced? Another thing that could be done is we have protections at the United Nations level. We have protections at the African Union level. However, at the East African community level, we actually do not have import regulations in place, and that would be a valuable place where we can actually input regulation, because it offers a second tier of protection, because East African community law is binding in the country. So if someone doesn't find the ability to hold their government to account on the national level, they can at least be able to see some level of recourse at the regional level. Now, when it comes to the question of how we improve youth involvement in sanitation, especially in relation to people waste management, I believe that can be good in two ways. The first is how we improve the engagement in the public space and how we improve their space in the private sector. So when it comes to the public space, the benefit we have with our devolved system is that sanitation management is one, or the public service delivery of sanitation services is one of those devolved services to the county government. The benefit that allows us is it's easier to get youth involved at the county level than it is to get them involved at the national level. We have a more direct link to be able to do that at that stage. But then now that also has to come with sensitization and information in order to ensure that the youth who actually get engaged at that level see sanitation as an important issue. Because in as much as we get youth in those places, the question is, do they see sanitation and people waste management as a priority? Because they see other things as a priority in terms of road infrastructure, in terms of school building, and they do not consider the impacts of people waste management, and they do not consider the impacts of sanitation. Getting them into those positions will have a negative impact, won't necessarily have moved the chain anywhere else. When we look at it from the private sector space, we already have a degree of youth involvement, but then you find that the youth involvement is concentrated, first of all, on the labor end of things. So you find that they are working as employees and also on the early stages, again, of the value chain. So they are not going further towards the steps and towards treatment and reusability. So I think there's work that needs to be done there in terms of how do we ensure that first of all, when youth are getting involved, they're not getting involved only at a labor capacity, they're creating entrepreneurs, we are creating people who are being able to be asset holders. When it comes to considering that, what can be done in that front is, in terms of entrepreneurs who comes up with an innovation, do they know what intellectual property laws are there to protect whatever innovation they come with? Do they know what connections in government that they can utilize to be able to partner with government? So we are in the stage where we have a lot of PPP. Do they know how to go through more formal means of accessing credit? So these types of sensitizations will be good in terms of helping and beneficial in terms of helping these members of the youth being able to access the means to be able to get them into the future value chain, but not at a labor position, but as a business owner position, at an entrepreneurial position. And on top of that, there's work that also needs to be done on the demand side as well as the supply side. Because in as much as you can get someone to get into the people value chain, get to the point where they create they're creating briquettes. If you go and you start selling those briquettes and people still see that as future waste, you put them in a position in which they're put them in a business space in which there's no profit to be made. You need to work towards actually improving perceptions and also creating demand on the demand side in terms of putting in structures in place for the use of organic fertilizers made of human feces, changing public perception on materials made from human waste. And I believe that a lot of this can also be done from the education level. We do have a framework for education for wash, but a lot of it is predicated on the idea of hygiene, on cleanliness and all of that. But then the question is, can we utilize that to now actually change attitudes on fecal waste and materials made from fecal waste at a young level? Because young minds are very malleable. Once a perception is put towards fecal waste, it's already cemented for a significant time. Changing it later on becomes a very significant issue. On top of that, can we find inter-ministry coordination that helps push forward this idea of fecal waste management? Is the Ministry of Agriculture's position on the use and adoption of organic fertilizers made from human waste congruent with the position that the Ministry of Health is taking, Ministry of Water and Sanitation is taking? Are we having inter-ministry coordination? Because often enough we talk about silos that exist, but we talk about those silos from ministry perspective. The government is one body, so why can't we move to a position in which we take a strategic approach towards fecal waste management that looks at inter-ministry coordination and inter-ministry cooperation? I believe that those are my...
Thank you so much. Those are very important highlights that we have noted down. But I'm wondering, what is your take with respect to the sanitation regulation when it comes to gender?
When it comes to gender, there has to be a very specific and direct stance that is taken. When it comes to sanitation, it's not a question of one size fits all. I've already mentioned about how when we look at young girls in school going through their menstrual cycle, that's something that can directly and does directly affect their ability to access their right to education. It's something that affects their ability to participate actively in the education system. And as we're doing that, the thing is, it can't just be a focus on providing facilities and talking to girls. Young men have a role to play in that as well, because a lot of the stigma that occurs, that is pushed towards these young girls, comes from young men within those circles. And we need to have a definite and directed conversation with young men in this country in terms of sensitization, in terms of being able to tell them that this is just a natural process that goes on. This is not something that you should be able to stigmatize someone for.
Thank you so much for that input. I will move on to Saituni. Thank you. Saituni works in Nakuru Water and Sanitation Company, where they have adopted the concept
Yeah, thank you. As mentioned, my focus for the last 10 years has been ensuring that people in the informal settlement, or what we call the low-income areas, or if you like, poor areas. Yes, in yesterday's discussion, we noted that this is a name that has been given. You know, you assume that these people are very poor and cannot be able to afford the services and all that. But we also forget, now that we have an advocate here, we forget that they have a right to both water and sanitation services. And you also realize that when you get to the urban centers, for example, in Nakuru or even Nairobi, 60% of the population reside in those low-income areas. So that actually tells us that there is a gap when it comes to service provision. And that is something that we really need to look at when it comes to both water and sanitation, which are human rights. And in relation to, say, for example, the citywide inclusive sanitation, this is an integrated process that ensures that everyone's needs is taken into consideration. And when we talk about sanitation, we are not only talking about the poor areas or the low-income areas, because in yesterday's discussion, we noted that in Kenya, it is only 16%. The sewer coverage is only 16%. Then that means that the rest of the population, which is 84%, is on-site sanitation. So in this case, what role do we need to, are we going to play in this? And when we talk about sanitation, it is not about when there is cholera outbreak in the low-income areas, you in the high end, you are safe. We are all affected. That is why for the cities, we are looking at the citywide inclusive sanitation, in that it is our responsibility as a whole. It is the responsibility for the county to ensure that there is, when preparing the investment plans, the low-income areas are taken care of, because that is where the largest population is. And in relation to the question, to the discussion points of today, when we talk about women, like what Madam Anabe just mentioned, when we talk about sanitation, we see women. When we talk about poor health, we see women. What about the men? Yet, when you go to the low-income areas, for example, you'll find who owns the title deed? It is the man. Who pays rent? It is the man. So that means they have a right to say in everything that goes around in the women's life. Yet, when it comes to ensuring that the kids have clean clothes before they go to school, ensuring that everyone in the house have eaten, it is about the women. So in this case, it is our responsibility as a whole, not one, for example, not only the water companies, but in ensuring improved sanitation for us in Nakuru, we work very closely with all the departments in the county and also the partners, because we have quite a number of partners that are focusing in the low-income areas on provision of sanitation. So what we are trying to see is through the citywide inclusive sanitation, we want to make sure that we have done our needs assessment. What is the need of these people? What is the need of the women when it comes to sanitation? What are the needs of the school-going girls when it comes to sanitation? And for the water company, for example, we work very closely with the WASH department, with the public health department that deals with WASH in schools. Because as we address sanitation in schools, as we address water issues in schools, we have to work as a team, not only for the water company. Because as you mentioned, like in yesterday's presentation, we noted that someone has to be accountable, because we are a water and sanitation company, but we have mandates. To what extent as water companies when it comes to providing these water and sanitation services. So what we've been doing over time, and we are still doing, of course, it is a long process, and we are really trying to see how best we can work together, is we have developed proper water and sanitation strategies for the water companies. We have mapped out our partners, WASH partners in the county, that is Nakuru County, and continuously we've been looking at different financing financing options for sanitation in the, not only in the low-income areas, but in this case, I want to talk about sanitation as a whole, because I mentioned that it affects all of us. And for schools, what we have done is we've been trying to bring together partners to invest in school sanitation. For example, construction of toilets. And we noted that, for example, with this current education system, we have very limited sanitation facilities at schools. You get to a school whereby there's a population of over 1,000, and there are only like 6 blocks, 6 toilets. So we've brought together quite some partners who've been supporting us to construct toilets in schools. We are also doing sanitation at household level, because we noted that this is our problem as women. Then what we are also doing is at household level, we've got some quite financing options, like for example, the Water Sector Trust Fund has been financing the water companies in constructing toilets in the low-income areas. We also have partners like Finishing Mondial, which have come up with the sanitation marketing options, in that it is we go outside there to sensitize people to know that it is their responsibility to invest in improved sanitation, because it is our responsibility as a whole. So in that case, for the water company, as I mentioned, do not have like specific budget for especially sanitation, and more specifically when we talk about women. But we've been able to work on this through partners and the Department of Health in improving sanitation in the informal settlements and in schools.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want first of all to thank Strathmore for inviting us to participate in this conference or forum. We have signed actually an MOU with Strathmore, and we're working together in this area of water and sanitation. I think we are the only water company, or we are the first one actually to reach into an agreement with Strathmore, so that we can benefit also from their skills and stock of expertise. And we're happy that the partnership is actually bearing fruits. This question of sanitation, or water and sanitation, is a very critical question in our country. Not only in our country, actually it's something that many countries are pursuing. And I wanted to say that under the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, water and sanitation is a critical enabler if countries have to advance in their development aspirations to the next level. The priority given, if you look at SDG number 6, access to water and sanitation by all, is actually prioritization of women and girls. Because when there is no water, when sanitation is not right, those who bear the highest suffering actually are women and girls. And that is why this is a critical priority for our country. If you look at our Vision 2030, although it's coming to an end, I've actually made comments that it can be revised. The targets on sanitation is to ensure that our country actually reaches 80% coverage when it comes to sanitation. And when you talk about 80% coverage, we're actually talking about seaward sanitation. You know, constructing sewer lines in our urban areas so that everybody is reached in terms of access to sanitation. In Eldoret, we are about 30%. We are actually advancing to becoming a city in the near future. And if we go to city status, our sanitation coverage actually will come down to less than 10% because the area coverage actually now increases. So that shows that as a town, we have a lot of work to do. These projects are capital intensive. The same challenges faced by Eldoret is also faced by our urban areas. I'm providing a background. I know the question I've been asked is about container-based sanitation. Now in Eldoret, some of these low-income areas actually we've been able to reach, but not all. In fact, some of our residents in those areas, sometimes they do not want to get connected because of the tariff. Because you know, at the end of the day, if you connect to a sewer line, you will start paying. And sometimes they might resort to pit latrines. We've been doing under our Propua program, we've been helping them to come up with, you know, toilets in the past. But I think since I assumed office as the new MD, I realized that the suspect cholera outbreaks in those areas is because of, you know, shallow wells, as well as this question of pit latrines in low-income areas. Because at the end of the day, the distance between the well and the latrine is not so far. And some of these, you know, they get mixed up and then, you know, those kind of diseases emerge. So what we did is that after attending various resource mobilization forums, one of which is Afri-Cities in Kisumu, we were able to look for partners who can help us with alternatives as we develop our seaward sanitation, which is currently actually gained attention because I've seen the Ministry of Water has actually earmarked over 100 kilometers of sewer in our hometown to bring on board certain solutions which are quick fixes in low-income areas and also which helps our population to get out of communicable diseases like cholera and others. So we said, okay, let's come up with partnership with Synergy. And currently we are developing what we call container-based sanitation or non-sewer sanitation. In fact, during our this year's World Toilets Day, we were able to launch that initiative, and many of these container-based sanitation solutions have actually assisted many women. And not only women, even men, because container-based sanitation solutions require people who will come and work and transport some of this solid waste, you know, human solid waste, because there's a separation. When we talk about container-based, actually it's a technology which separates the liquid from the solid, and it doesn't use water. So at first instance, you see that we save on water. Most of our urban areas are actually water-scarce areas. I've lived in Nairobi before, and I know you guys, you really struggle sometimes to look for water. You are not even sure whether that water is okay. Even in Eldoret, it has come to us in all of our towns. This is a challenge. There's not enough water. So when we adopt this kind of container-based sanitation, it also helps us to save on the little resource of water that we have. So what has this container-based solution done? It has assisted women. Instead of now sharing the public latrines with everyone, at least each household in the low-income areas has a container-based solution for their family. So it's become family. It's no longer going to be like you're sharing, you know, toilets or pit latrines. So this one has increased on health. It's really improving on those areas, dignity, as well as issues of safety. because you realize in low-income areas, for women, safety is a big concern. And you know, sometimes the call of nature can come even at night, and you want to ease yourself. Yeah? So when we have this kind of solutions in family setups, you end up ensuring that there is safety for our women and girls, and also there is safety for men. Because you see, when they're, you know, in low-income areas, even men are vulnerable. When you have public toilets which are shared by everyone, others might be tempted, you know, to interfere with the women who go there. And in the process, you also get vulnerable to be jailed. So I think this is a very good solution that we would like to advance and also, you know, advocate. I'm the vice chair of WASPA at the national level. And we are also advocating that regulations, and I wanted to tell the lawyer in the panel that there is need for promotion of non-seaward sanitation in our country as part of alternative solutions to the problem which is being faced by our country in terms of ensuring that our population are actually catered for when it comes to water and sanitation. There's also an element of engagement. Even as I go to respond to the second question, I don't want to take a lot of your time. There's the element of engagement, and I wanted to say that we need to relook into our laws, especially on infrastructure development. In Kenya, we have a three-tier kind of institutional framework when it comes to water and sanitation. And I think this is affecting placing money in the right place in terms of addressing these issues of water and sanitation. I would suggest that if the Water Act and its regulations can be relooked from the human rights perspective, there can be a proposal whereby even before development of these infrastructures, like the sanitation infrastructure, which is capital intensive, or water infrastructure, there can be engagement of the counties or public participation at the local level. Because what happens currently is that a decision can be done, a feasibility study can be done, and then the Waterworks Development Agency just comes and start developing projects and programs in our hometowns. And currently we are beneficiaries of last mile sanitation project. And there are a lot of outcries sometimes, a lot of legal demands, people saying that their privacies are being invaded, people saying that roads are blocked by the trenches that are being dug so that these pipelines can actually be placed. So as we move forward in our container-based sanitation, we have actually created a department of strategy in our company where they do surveys, you know, and they organize what we call water barazas. You know, you will call it public participation, but for us we call it water baraza because that's a language near to the people on the ground there. And these water barazas, they help us to understand the needs of our population. And we've been able to carry out gender analysis, and we have a more targeted approach, a smart way in terms of addressing the sanitation needs of our population. Of course, we want the communication to participate, and sometimes because of lack of enough resources, we lobby and engage the community to provide labor, for example. Because sometimes the budgets that we have as water service providers, it might not be enough. And sometimes even the budgets being given to us by development partners is not enough. And when we go to the water parazas, even the community says, we are willing to do the trenches. We are willing to provide labor. We are willing to do 1, 2, 3. And then the company can do the rest. And this is how we've been able to reach so many people in our low-income areas in Eldoret. There is the issue of sanitation as well. I mean, sensitization, even for the seaward sanitation. Because we've realized that in urban areas, many people do not actually comply in the manner in which we need to use, for example, flush toilets. So you realize that many of our population dump in the flush toilets solid waste. So Tapata or Mekamboga, they are putting sanitary pads, they are putting pampers, they are putting even old gunias. Then in the process, the sewer line is blocked. And our population in the end get to serve us. So we are carrying out currently sensitization and our Linda Maji Mtaani program to educate our population on the use of flush toilets, because it makes it easy, you know, for us to deliver the service if we get this kind of collaboration from our population. So there's the question of also M&E. We try to, you know, look at what we are doing, whether it is the correct. We revisit issues of water barazas. We engage with our community. They give us solutions or areas that they think we need to improve. So by and large, I think there has to be a paradigm shift. We have to seek the collaboration of our population. And I think this question of water barazas or public participation is important. I came to the water company and I realized every Mwananchi is, you know, throwing stones at us. They might be throwing stones and say, oh, you guys are not doing good service. But I've come to realize that we need to take our all of town approach to sensitize on everyone so that every one of us can do their part. In the water sector, people are not paying for the service. And that's why if you go to most of these water companies, they lack finances. Why? Because there are debts. In our hometown, we have debts over 500 million. People have not paid for water. In Nairobi here, it's billions. Yeah, so you see that paradigm shift, because unless we have resources, unless our people participate, because if you pay for the water, you will also be helping us to reach as many people as possible in terms of, you know, sanitation coverage or issues of water coverage. So I think these are some of the things that, as a company, we are trying to address. We just want to face the facts as they are directly. If we do not have resources, if we do not have partnerships, if our lawyers do not form caucuses of advocacy, so that we can have a lot of discussions on human rights perspective, because you see, access to water and sanitation, according to our Katiba, is a human right. But we rarely hear lawyers speaking out. I've never heard Kenya Human Rights Commission talk about issues of sanitation. They're just talking about police brutality, you know, I don't know what. Just, we need to have our institutions to focus on the right issues and pursue this area so that our citizen can survive. You'll be surprised if you go to Eldoret, a lot of our Wananchi are still going to Sociani River to help themselves in the bush. Because at least there's some bushes in that Sociani River. Open defecation. In our country, in 21st century, we still have these things. One of the biggest challenges, as I said, even as we address these issues, is financial resource. I'm happy that after establishing the strategy department in our company, after coming up with a robust communication strategy, we've seen a lot of partners who have gotten interested in working with us. Soon we are going to be signing an MOU with water and sanitation for up and poor, just to look at the same issues in low-income areas. So I think even in this panel, or as Strathmore, you need to engage and get to know what is going on the ground, so that we move from textbook to the real issues on the ground. Because you see, we can discuss textbook issues, but there are real issues which are actually on the ground, and our population are very collaborative, and they are willing to work with us, because the issue of toilet is a pertinent issue in town. In fact, non-seaward sanitation, or this concept of container-based sanitation, when we started publicizing it, even in Eldoret prisons, they came to us. You go to those guys the prison wardens, they didn't even have toilets. So we've provided them some of this container-based sanitation in matatu terminals. People come from rural areas. When they come to town, you can't enter any one hotel. There are a lot of restrictions. So what happens? So we've been able to also provide the same in bus terminals, and we're able to demarcate and say this is for ladies, this is for men. And I think in this process, we are able to address our gender needs, and at the end of the day, we are able to address sanitation requirements as we move forward. Yes, actually, when you have a container, it's only 850 shillings you pay to Synergy, I think, per month. But you see what we have done, we have given a leeway to those guys who are operating public container-based solutions to charge a fee. So per month they can even generate up to 15,000, but they will just pay to a fee of about 850. And we are looking at providing one of our wastewater treatments. We have quite a good size of land. We have already approved for Synergy to establish you know, a waste treatment plant. They have a factory here where they grow a certain kind of fly. I heard it was mentioned earlier, I don't know the name. Yes, but I went there and I saw the output out of that. So we want to establish the same in Eldoret. We have already provided some land so that we can use this container-based sanitation to provide employment for our people. What I have come to realize, even if we invest in seaward sanitation, there will always be a need for container-based sanitation. Yeah, as I've said, mtu akitoka ushago akifika town, when you want to enter someone's hotel, unafukuzwa. So this solution is helping even those guys who are from the rural area, who don't live in town. They come and go, you know, to get a place to help themselves. But they also bring raw material now for this kind of factory. Yeah, they bring a raw material for this kind of a factory thing. Now, I don't want to call it shit. You know, let me tell you, if it's going to earn you income, we need to also have to start to change our mindset. Because this is a business. You see, it's a business. So when you say shit, it's negative. But when you say raw material, it's positive. No, raw materials, because you see, at the end of the day, it creates employment. Let me tell you, I went to Synergy and I was shocked. I even feel like when I grow up, I want to work in Synergy. Because they're earning good money. Those guys are earning good money. Thank you very much.
I am not using the mic. Thank you so much for that input. Before we move from the two water companies, Nakuru and Eldoret Water, it would be good to understand whether you have any strategies for menstrual hygiene management now that you provide sanitation services. Do you have a component of menstrual waste management?
Yeah, thank you. For Nakuru Water, we don't have a strategy on that, but as I mentioned, in all, like whatever project that we do, we work very closely with the Department of Health. And what we've done as a company is we have public health, a team of public health, like the school wash coordinator and the county wash coordinator have been seconded to us, so that whatever that we are doing or in relation to sanitation, we work closely with them so that they can take over that specific aspect.
Yeah, for me, I think there's an opportunity there, and especially also for lawyers. You need to call for an amendment in our legal framework so that water and sanitation providers can also, you know, take over this issue of solid waste management. You realize that if you look at us, that issue of solid waste management has actually been taken up by the counties. Yet they don't have that capacity. Like for our case, we collect lease fees, cleansing fees. Cleansing fees actually was intended to be used for solid waste management. But because of the lucrativeness of the business, it has been transferred to Kanjo. And then now, it is being mismanaged. The management of the same is not well done. Actually, we received some visitors from Sweden, and for so many years, for the last decade, actually, they've been saying this solid waste management should actually be transferred to the water company. They will apply for tariff at the water sector regulatory board. They get a tariff. Like we did some calculations for Eldoas. Currently, we collect 40 shillings. If we have to go and, if we are given that legal status, we can actually lobby with Water Service Regulatory Board. We can increase that fee to 300, and we can be able to address, including even this solid waste management. So there are legal gaps in the water sector which I think they need to be addressed.
Thank you so much. So we are saying that is an area that needs to be addressed. And I was actually asking you this because I got to visit some offices last month in one of the counties. We were just looking at the enabling environment for sanitation and menstrual hygiene management. And it was sad to realize that in actually in most of those buildings, they had not provided a bucket for the used pads. And the ladies who work in those buildings who actually were telling us that you have two options. One, you don't come to work when you are at that point of the month. Or two, when you come to work, when you change, then you carry it back home. You carry it in the bag. So I was just thinking that this is an area that has been ignored, and maybe as people, players in the sanitation field, we need to think about it. It is not only about that girl in school who does not have a pad. We even have these ladies, these women who go to the office, and can you imagine having to carry a used pad in your bag back home, to dispose it at home? To move us forward, I'll call upon Betseba Otuga, who is the founding director of Ahadi Reusable Pads, just to bring us to speed on what strategies we should consider in addressing menstrual hygiene management.
Thank you so much. It will not be very long, maybe as my colleagues have been, but I'll just pick a few points and be able to say. A lot has been said about menstrual health, and most of us are not new to it, but I'd like to talk about education and awareness. I'll start by asking a question to my colleagues, all of us, and especially the women. When you started your first period, what kind of information did you have? I don't expect an answer, because the answer is many women are shocked when they receive their first period. How many of you agree with that? Because they have not been taught. Nothing is said. The social culture and education system has broken down so that we are no longer going to our grandmothers to teach us about the facts of life. And so you pick up things that may not necessarily be true and in line with the kind of education that we need. So we find that for menstrual health to be effective, we need to teach about it. I'm happy to hear about the CBS system, where they start learning from the very beginning and they don't call them subjects. And so the class is not ashamed, or there's no segregation. There is inclusivity, so that by the time somebody has passed through the CBC education, they know a lot about menstrual education. So for us, we are operating in the community, and we have platforms. We go to schools, both primary and secondary schools. We go to the village. We go to the community. Like he said, theirs is called Water Baraza, but we go to the barazas in the community and we talk about menstrual health, and we get opportunities to teach so that there is awareness of menstrual health education. There is awareness of the interventions that can be available. So in our education, we tell the communities, we teach in the schools what is available to take care of menses. And as you have heard, many men don't even know what happens to their sisters and brothers and the like. So when we go to schools, we no longer segregate. We bring the boys and the girls together. We talk to the chief. Chief atasema, hizo ni mambo za wanawake tutaki kusikia, but we'll ask him to call for us a forum, because menstruation is about the next generation, isn't it? If we are not menstruating, or we all get infected, we are like Corona came. If something happens about reproductive health and all that, then we won't have the next generation, isn't it? And this is not addressed in the policy and in the other spheres. So us, in our small way, when we came to this platform because we realized that there was a gap in PADS poverty, we realized that this is one of the things that we need to do. When we came to this platform, we thought that we were going to manufacture pads and then sell. But we found that there were many hindrances because of the things that we are talking about. And so we had to take another tangent. As much as we are producing reusable menstrual products, we know that there are about, especially now in the schools, shame and stigma. Shame and stigma has come about because culturally, we are not talking about menstruation, isn't it? It is a women thing. And I talked to somebody yesterday in Turkana. When a woman is menstruating, she's isolated and she stays behind in the sand somewhere. Definitely that woman will get infections. And these infections might spread throughout the family because of relationships and all that. So we find that education is very, very crucial. And we are standing in that area so that we are able to do something in a small way. It has been said that there's a lot of policy around whatever it is, but how are we implementing? The person who did the opening address talked about the cat, the bell, and the person. So we've decided to be the person to tie the bell on the cat. And our cat is the poverty that surrounds menstrual health. Our products, we help and also enhance the knowledge of the availability of the products that are there. How many of you have heard about menstrual cups? Yeah, because you're in our sector, but a lot of people haven't heard. And okay, you've heard about it. How many of you have seen a menstrual cup? 1, 2, 3, a quarter of our population. So you see that it is important. You cannot make a wise decision if you don't know what is available, can you? So that is the reason why education is so much important in this section. And so we do not segregate, as I said. When we go for our outreaches, we talk about all the available options, of which reusable pads is one of the major ones. And it is way ahead because not only does reusable pads help in mitigating the pads poverty, providing a solution for use now, but we also have other benefits to the environment. We have benefits, like I've said, in the overall education, because a girl, when she drops out of school, because she did not have sufficient management products, then how is her life like later on? She will miss on her desired destiny. And we can see powerful women in this place competing at the same level with men, earning the same salary, and being useful to the economy. Is that right? But what will happen to that girl when she just remains as a house girl? She just remains as Mama Fua. There's an example of a girl who comes to wash my clothes. And one time she could not come. She's a woman. So she asked me, can I send my daughter? I said, yes, send her. And she came, she had done standard 8 last year. So we just got talking and I asked her, in the village, there hapo kwa kijiji, kuna wasichana wamezaa wako na watoto? She said, yes. Can I get them? Yes. So we got them and we had an outreach. We were able to raise funds to distribute pads to them, and I also teamed up with my friend who brought diapers. We gave soap and we gave masks. I was doing masks at that point. So you find that these women will not go and have transactional sex the way we said, because everybody is aware that we can use this and the other. They got pregnant. Okay, I never really went deep into why they were pregnant, but some of them is because they engage in transactional sex, sex for pads. Piki guys, kinyosi guys, and who else? Not Mama Mboga. Mama Mboga will not. Mama Mboga will not make another Mama Mboga pregnant. And we know that they are intersex. Yeah, and I'll tell you something free of charge concerning that. There are people who are intersex, and it's not their mistake. They found themselves that way. And when maybe a parent is raising up an intersex, she really doesn't know where this child belongs. So most often, because we like girls and they are nice to deal with, we think they are girls. So they've become big. Then secondary, he's in Form 3, and he finds that he's a man. So he's experimenting in the boarding school. So this one came to know that he's a man through experiment, but he was having both sexes. So anyway, so we go out there and we train them not only on the available products, but we also train on reproductive health. We train on care and use, menstruation. How do you keep yourself clean? How do you take care of the take care of the sicknesses that surround it, the normal ones? So we talk to them, we tell them this is normal, and we give examples that menstruating is nothing to be ashamed about. It's just a system of life, like going for a long call or a short call. And so no longer, like here, we're not feeling ashamed to talk about defecation. So why should you be ashamed about bleeding? And so we make it something that is acceptable in the community. And by, I know that we are going to overcome the shame and stigma that is associated with menstruation. And once we have overcome that, then people can come out to help one another. In a school where I was, when we started these things, the boys were shying and laughing. So I just asked the boys, how many of you would like to be fathers in the future? All of them wanted. And how many of you would like to be mothers in the future? Of course, in like standard 6, nobody wants to be a mother or a father. But now I'm telling them about the future they all want. So how are you going to be a father if you have not reached Seminac? It's called Seminac. The opposite of starting period is Seminac. So they said, yes, so now they're shying away. And then, so are you going to help your sisters? Yes, we are going to be helping. How will you help them? Like if they see somebody has done that, they can tell their female colleague to help and things like that. So we are really demystifying the issue of menstruation and how to go about it. In Ahadi, we also talk about proper disposal of the pads. A lot have been said about the wash. But in the rural area, you find that these wash programs have not reached to the last girl. Yeah? So when we go to the rural areas, we were there like a month ago. The girls don't even have uniform. They are in party, and they have no pads. It becomes very difficult for them, even to listen and to concentrate in school. That has already been said, they lag behind. But we also teach them, we teach how to make pads with what is available to schools. And we also teach and train, like the lady I told you about. Apart from now washing clothes, she will come to me, I'll teach her machine work, I'll teach her to stitch, and even if she's not coming to stitch at my shop, then she can go to Uhuru Market, Kikomba, and get a job where she can earn a bit more. So we are also in the area of creating employment indirectly. I have talked about reduction of menstrual waste. When we give out pads, to date we've given about 9,000 pads. These pads are, you can use them for 2 years. So when you're using 6 pads for 2 years, the menstrual disposal, the waste disposal is minimal, isn't it? And I have a calculation, because if a woman is using like 12 pads a month, in a year she will have used so much. But for the rest of her life, she will have disposed 7 tons. And there are many people who are disposing that 7 tons because the end of their menstruation is every day, isn't it? I finished mine, then she'll finish hers tomorrow. I'll have dumped 7 tons. But with ours, I can dump only a few, maybe 10 kilos. So we are also in that, and we are advocating for a change, a mindset. He said paradigm shift. These pads are not as we think, because when we talk about blood issues, you find that blood is like pee. You can wash your panties, isn't it? So why can't you wash your pads also? So we demystify that feeling that menstruation is dirty. It is not dirty. It is clean, and it is a sign of good health. How many of you have ever looked at your periods to see the color and if there's change and all that? Because you can know the health status of a woman, even your own, by checking on your pads. And when you are washing your pads, you'll be able to see every day that today my periods are darker, today they are lighter. And so there are diseases that when there's a big disparity between how your periods are operating, you'll become conscious and you can begin to interrogate yourself so that you can know, am I still okay when these periods are like that? So that is one of the areas of education. And I cannot talk enough about education on this. I've been also asked to talk about policy. I would say that to a small extent, we are implementing the policy. But we are not activists, and we are not policy advocates, simply because we are a social enterprise. But we are in these spaces so that we can also lend our expertise and we can lend our experiences, and all of us can come together and see that we're taking this thing to the next level. And as you've seen, everything that each and every one of us is doing is interdependent on the other person. So we cannot say that Ahadi, they're a business, maybe they just want to make money. Yes, even the water and sanitation, they want to make money. You cannot be in that organization if there is no element of like bringing back. Otherwise, it becomes unsustainable. And we're talking about sustainability a lot. With what we are doing, it will become sustainable, not only to us, but you find that it will be sustainable because our product is affordable. The cost of one menstruation with a reusable sanitary pad is 20 shillings. And with the rising cost, we find that a pack of disposable pads, a good quality one, should be around 120 shillings. I don't know, but I've been looking around. But there are some others which are also cheaper. Maybe they are going for 60 bob. Now, always was going for 50. I don't talk about the other names because you know, I don't have the right to do that, isn't it? But just comparatively, you'll find that. Okay, so that is what we do. Our pads are cheaper, they are affordable, they are more hygienic because they don't have chemicals and they don't have plastics. So that is why in this space that we can partner with one another and make the menstrual health arena a safer place. And I conclude by saying we'll be having a launch for Ahadi reusable pads on the 26th of May. The launch will be at Parklands, a place called Westview, isn't it? West Park, on the 11th floor. It's starting at 8 o'clock. And we want to invite all stakeholders so that we can come and converse and see how we can partner so that we synergize one with another and make the menstrual health management arena a safe place for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I am very grateful to all the panelists. We have had a very fruitful discussion. We have very few minutes left, so I'd like to take this back to the audience so that we can get a few questions. Okay, so we will start with 1, 2, 3. And okay, you just say your name and you indicate whom you are directing the question to. Thank you.
My name is Peter Hamisi. I am a Pan-African sanitation actor. First of all, I want to appreciate the panel. It is a very rich panel, and it's basically knowledgeable in the space they were located. So thank you very much. Now, about GESI. GESI is a very interesting conversation. But when we are talking about the last mile, last mile in GESI, my question is the ability to pay. The ability to pay for the service. Even as much as it is being approached from a social enterprise perspective, the ability to pay is still a problem because then, like Peter said, around his place, people are still involved in OD. And yet, there is the aspect of container-based sanitation, which I really appreciate, Peter, because, and I'm happy that you also sit at WASPA. And I think you want to take, I would love you to take this conversation on container-based sanitation technologies to your partners, to your colleagues, because I've had conversations with some of your colleagues And when you tell them about container-based, they tell you, no, that one is your thing. We know sewer. So you know, they were socialized. They were socialized in a way that they only understand sanitation from the perspective of sewerage coverage. About container-based, that one is none of their business. And I'm so excited that you can enumerate these issues about container-based. And that shows that shit is bankable. Because if the bankability of shit is what you are actually talking about, that you can take your good shit to the market. Of course, there's shit that's not good shit. Some shit is sick. And we have to interrogate this issue about segregating real shit that you can take to the market and that other shit that is sick. You get the point? So I really appreciate your space and your scope. Zaitun, we have had conversations with you sometimes with those guys you are training, guys from Malawi, Chirwa, and you remember. And I know you have been in that space, and you have been involved in products, basically real products. I remember urea and other products you guys were involved in. And I think this is a conversation that we should be having about bankability of fecal sludge. Or liquid and solid waste. So thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm multitasking, so it's an opportunity to participate at least. I'm doing photography and I'm from the ministry also. But I wanted to say I'm very encouraged by Ahadi and what you're doing. And I just want to say the issue of menstrual hygiene, we need to escalate it to men. We need to escalate it to boys. It's very critical. And always have personal stories. I always come from a personal point of view when I start talking about menstrual hygiene. I'm one of the menstrual hygiene champions. When I went to Turkana recently, every man looked at me and said, wow, this guy, and he's an old man, why is he into this dangerous territory, taboo territory? But I talk from personal experience because normally, when we got married, for many, many years, I wasn't involved in this thing of procuring or buying menstrual pads. And, we were living in a place where she could have friends and, she could say, by the way, if you're passing that way, tell so-and-so to pass over here. Or she could call a friend and, and I wouldn't know what the agenda is all about. So mambo ya wanawake tu hatujui ni nini. Kumbe anatafuta mtu anaweza, because yes, ingine zake zilikuwa very painful, backaches na nini. Wakutuma kwenda kununua nini? Pads. And I am not supposed to. We have been cultured that we men shouldn't get into that territory. But we kept moving, and finally we moved to a place where it's kind of cozy, far from many people. And the children grow up, and sasa tuko mimi na bibi bwana. Sasa bwana itukuja circumstance, hawezi liita mtu akuje, na mimi ndio niko available. I had to do the purchasing. And you should have seen me in my first buying of the sanitary pads. Naingia supermarket, natafuta hiyo lane ya supermarket, na imark, the way animals mark their territory. You mark it, it is this lane. Sasa unangojea paka population inakuwa very low. Ukifika hapo unaangalia left, right, unairusha mara moja. Sasa hivyo ndio ilikuwa my first experience bwana. Hii kitu is very dangerous. It's like full of electricity. So kufika pia kwa ku exchange money at the cashier. Unaweka vitu zingine haraka haraka alafu hiyo unairusha tu hapo na ukiangalia we. Alafu unamuuliza haraka haraka, imekuja pesa ngapi yote toto? Hautaki ya kuengage kwa hiyo. Saa nyingine anaweza kaa hivi aseme ngoja hii sijui natafuta ile kale kabali ya machine ku sense the price. Sasa unaona this engagement, unaangalia behind you, people will start asking. But after some time, I just became normal and it was not a big deal. And sometimes that's the only thing I go and buy because hakuna business ingine. Imefika mahali ya mwezi, I don't have money and that's the only thing I can buy. So there is no embarrassment. Hata cashier wananijua hapo, niko hivyo, mimi nanunua. So So when I was talking to the Turkana men, I realized, when I read a little bit about the Turkana, I realized it's a taboo subject there. And then at the same time, the women are suffering. And it is contributing to the dropout of girls in school in a very serious manner. And not only dropout, to marriage. Sometimes we think in these semi-arid areas, it is their culture that the girls marry early. But in fact, people have overcome those cultures of marrying early. So now it is other factors that are contributing to girls getting married. One of them is the unavailability or inability for the family to procure sanitary pads, and inability for the girls to ask somebody in the family. Because maybe she could be the big girl, the other girls are in boarding, na sasa ni mzee ako available, ndio ako na pesa, mama is very poor, yeye ni wa house. So mzee kuulizwa mambo ya pads ni gumu. So I would like to encourage us all as men. It's not really a question. That's why you won't have to answer this one. To encourage us men to participate actively. In fact, Turkana, I ask, how many of you guys, my fellow says, mumewahi kununulia bibi zenyu sanitary pads? Nobody raised a hand. I guess the same if I try to make the same effort here. So, or if you have, you are feeling, why should I be seen that I buy sanitary pads, okay? So it's a topic we need to completely destigmatize, because it is actually making our girls not contribute economically and not feel, comfortable. And sometimes the boys just buy the sanitary pads. That's a very private thing. And they get married to that boy who will buy the sanitary pads first, because sasa huyu anaelewa mambo yangu ya ndani. You see? Then the girl just decide to get away from home and marry this funny guy who has discovered the secrets of getting girls through buying. Sio ati anawa blackmail, anawanunulia, alafu this girl feels such a strong attachment to this man. If this man can be concerned about my sanitary pad, he must be making a lovely husband. So that's how some girls get married. Lastly, on the company, I'm from the Ministry of Water, we need to work together. Today, a toilet, before toilets never used to be paid for. Now it has become a culture. 10 shillings is the standard rate of paying for a toilet, standalone toilet, okay? Regardless of whether it is small, big, whether it has mirrors for women, whether it has water to wash hands, angine maji ni chafu hata utaki kuosha na hiyo maji. Whether the toilet paper, like for me, I always have to buy 10 pieces, because kanapewa kadogo ninaweza kupata nimetumia vidole. Okay, so we need to standardize what is this value when you pay for toilet facility, what value minimum service you need to get out of it. But in the slum areas, we need to be careful. I went to Mukuru and it is 10 shillings, yes, and they don't have house toilets. At least Sanaji and Fresh Life are working in some of the places, but in many of the places, they rely on those toilets to pay for 10 shillings. And then I was asking myself, because we interviewed with the Mary University, I was in Mary, we interviewed them. And they say they pay 10 shillings, and then they say, can you afford it throughout? They say, no, sometimes in Africa Mahali, I can't afford the 10 bob. Then alikuwa nasema, it can get worse if you have a family, alafu mekula kitu kibaya, and it is possible in the slum areas, and you are diarrheaing. Can you imagine going 10 times 100 shillings to pay for that? So sometimes we who live in houses that are already having inside toilets, they are already well contained with facility. We need to think how the poor are paying so much for a call of nature. Even me, I don't think I can afford in the cost of diarrhea, and for a whole week, every day I pay 100 shillings just for myself. What about the whole family? It could amount to 500 shillings. It's a lot of money. So we need to think again how just having them paying 10 shillings and there is a facility there, that is not enough. We need to go beyond that. Thank you.
Just 1 second. And there are a couple of things that we pretend we don't understand, yet we all understand. Serving people with water from a water kiosk is not an eventual solution. It's a stopgap because people do not have inside service. People using public toilets, apart from public places, in compounds where they live, is not a final solution. So let's not stop cheating our people. that we need to strive to giving them the eventual service, but as a stopgap measure. Where there are communities and there's no private toilet, we will provide the public toilets. In community places, in bus stops, that is where public toilets belong. Thank you very much. And by the way, Tony is my son.
He has just confirmed something because I was keen on looking at the truth. And I even whispered to him. Yes, good afternoon. My name is Faith Masika, and I work for a project called USAID Western Kenya Sanitation Project. And we are implementing sanitation and menstrual hygiene management. So I'd like to congratulate Madam Otuga for what you are doing. If you are in Western Kenya, I'm sure we could have looked for ways that we could partner. So for us as Western Kenya, we are addressing menstrual hygiene management based on the menstrual hygiene management policy and strategy. And the policy adopts a three-pronged approach. First, you have to break the silence. Yes, women and girls have been menstruating from time immemorial, but menstruation has been a taboo topic. It has been a silent topic that we rarely discuss about it. But now it's time that we start talking about menstruation, and just to ensure that we mainstream aspects of menstrual hygiene management in all that we are doing on a daily basis. So on the three-pronged approach, the first is to break the silence, and that is to create awareness that menstruation is a normal biological function. We have sanitation facilities that do not offer women and girls the required privacy. There are instances whereby I've gone to county offices, government offices, you go to the washroom and there's nowhere to dispose the used sanitary towel, and you're forced to walk with it at home, to carry it in your handbag and take it back home. And USAID has done so many studies on menstruation, and there was a study on menstruation at the workplace. And from the study, it was found out that investing in menstrual hygiene management at the workplace has economic gains for the employer and even for the female employees, in that it will reduce on absenteeism, it will reduce on presenteeism, whereby sometimes women are at work, but they are not productive. Because I'm menstruating and there's nowhere where I can be able to go and change, so I'll be forced to stay with the product with the sanitary towel for a longer time that is recommended. So I'll be exposing myself to other infections. And again, I'll be afraid that maybe I'll have soiled my dress, or I'll be having some smell because I've stayed with my pad for a long time. And it's because there is no facility at the workplace that I can be able to go and change and dispose the sanitary towel. And and on the last aspect now is on safe reuse and safe disposal. And that is now whereby even now, yesterday I was talking to her from the Malindi Water and Sewerage Company and just asking how have they incorporated aspects of handling menstrual waste. Because there are many instances whereby menstrual waste has found itself in our water and sewerage systems. So how are water utilities addressing the aspect of menstrual waste? There are those that have invested in incinerators, there are those that have invested in landfills. So for me, it's just a call to all of us that from wherever we are, we have addressed aspects of water, sanitation. Now we also need to onboard menstrual hygiene management and be able to address it in a holistic manner, just that we're able to have equity and equality in the long run for both men and women. Thank you so much.
Very short, because it's just a continuation of the two. So I'm Simon Kipila from Narok, working with the Mattress as an NGO. My question goes to Madam Bathsheba, having talked about the reusable sanitary pads. It's an interesting thing that people are trying now. I'm saying that reusable sanitary pads, it's an interesting thing that people are coming up and trying to implement. But now, how about in the scenarios where there is no access to water to wash the reusable pads? For example, in Narok, in Samburu, Turkana, I mean, the 15 counties that were mentioned yesterday, the main problem is access to water. What do you do?
Okay. It seems most were comments. We had just around two questions. And one of them was on bankability of fecal waste from Mr. Hamisi. Whom did you direct it to? Okay. Okay, bankability of fecal waste and ability to pay for the container-based sanitations. And then the last question is on use of reusable pads in areas where there is no water. I know yours will be short. Just make it brief.
Okay, thank you so much. Just one clarification. Ahadi reusable pads is not the Ahadi for jiggers, but maybe we can work together later. About areas where there's no water, I said that we teach on hygiene and use and care of the pads. There's a way that they can wash pads with very little water and still the pads will become very clean. Because one of our instructions is that you soak the pad in just water enough to submerge the pad, 15 minutes, press out the dirty water, take another amount like that, then wash it with the rest of your clothes and it will be clean. And women will endeavor to look for at least 5 liters of water every month to keep themselves clean and to wash their pads. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I think in the container-based solution, for families it's different. You don't pay per day. Like you pay $850 per month. And remember, these are families with pit latrines, so they pay for exhauster $6,000 every time they come and pick the waste. So you can imagine, and during the rainy season, they can come 4 times, 5 times, that's almost 30,000. And as I agree with the presenter there, these are stopgap measures. For guys who go to, car stations or garages or those kind of places, this is little money that they are able actually to afford. Finally, the issue of another area which I think is of great concern is governance. Many women actually have found out that have been taken advantage when they don't have access to sanitation. There's a woman in Langas who ended up paying 30,000 Kenya shillings, having been promised to be connected to sewer line. And in the end, because she was very articulative and I think conscious of her rights, she was denied and she paid 30,000. So as UNDP says, the crisis of water is actually not the crisis of water, it's the crisis of governance. And I think if we enhance governance in this area of water and sanitation, we should be able to address a lot of these issues and we will be on track as a country in meeting our obligations and targets as we move forward to 2030.
Yeah, thank you. Just to say something, for us in Nakuru, actually, when we talk about sheets, that is raw material for us, and we see money out of that. And what we do as a water company, yes, we are a water and sanitation company, but we have established a subsidiary company that is, we are making briquettes out of fecal matter. And as a company, we are making sure that we are doing emptying of toilets because we need this, all the sludge from the sewers, we need the sludge from the pit latrines and the septic tanks. We have formed groups, we have private groups, pit emptying groups that are helping the company in doing the business, the emptying and transportation. And we are investing quite a lot in ensuring that people have proper sanitation options. As much as, yes, we have stop gaps, but we also want to make sure that we have standard toilets that are emptyable, because we cannot keep constructing toilets. Hakuna hata hiyo shamba. Where is that land to keep constructing toilets? So for us, when we talk about toilets, we talk about money. We are seeing money out of that. And we do, like, we are closing the sanitation value chain from containment, emptying, transportation, safe disposal, and reuse of the same. Yeah, thank you. And just to mention, I forgot to mention that for Nakuru Water or Nakuru Water companies, we have developed what we call the Gender Inclusion and Implementation Plan. That through that, it will help us to take care of all issues, including the menstrual hygiene and all that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, the panelists. I think this is a discussion that we can go on about on and on and on. If you still have some questions, you can catch up with the panelists, maybe during lunch, and then we can also see how to continue the conversation in other forums. Thank you so much.